In December 1986, 11 horses stepped off a cargo plane in northwestern China and walked straight into a stretch of desert so dead that local farmers had stopped calling it land. Scientists studying the region gave the herd a 15% chance of making it through the first winter. A film crew that flew in to document the release packed up and left after 2 days, convinced they were watching a slow-motion disaster. Decades later, that same herd would number in the hundreds, and satellite images would show the desert around them turning green. The strange part isn't that a group of horses beat bad odds. Horses survive hard winters all the time. The strange part is that none of these 11 animals had ever lived outside a fence. Not them, not their parents, not their grandparents. Every one of them had been born in a zoo enclosure, fed from buckets, watered from taps, and had never once had to find their own food in snow. That's the rule everyone in the room understood going in. Animals raised for generations in captivity lose the instincts that keep wild animals alive. Zoos know this. It's why reintroduction programs usually involve years of preparation, teaching young animals to forage, to avoid predators, sometimes even teaching them to fear humans again. These 11 horses got none of that. They were flown in, released, and left alone in a landscape that hit 42 degrees below zero within weeks. To understand why anyone even tried this, you have to understand what the horses were replacing. In 1969, the last wild horses disappeared from the stretch of the Junggar Basin. Nobody thought much of it at the time, but without hooves moving across it every day, the ground started to change. Rain that used to soak in began sliding off a crust that had grown hard and dense. Seeds couldn't break through it. By the early 1980s, the desert here was expanding by roughly 70 kilometers a decade, swallowing grassland and farmland and burying roads. In 1983, a single sandstorm carried tens of thousands of tons of topsoil from this basin over 1,000 miles and dropped it on Beijing. Hospitals in the capital saw a spike in respiratory cases from dust that had blown in from a desert most of those patients had never seen. The damage wasn't just cosmetic. Underground water that had held steady for centuries started dropping by meters in some areas, and farm output in the surrounding region fell by roughly a third within a few years. Government models projecting the trend forward reached an uncomfortable conclusion. Left unchecked, the sand could make Beijing itself difficult to live in within a few generations. That projection is what turned a regional soil problem into a national emergency. China had already tried the obvious fix. Millions of trees planted in long rows along the desert's edge meant to hold the sand in place. But trees need water the desert didn't have. Groundwater dropped, wells ran dry. Villages had to relocate. By 1985, the standard engineering playbook had failed, and a Chinese ecologist made an argument that sounded almost backward. Stop planting and bring back an animal instead. The animal he wanted was about as difficult a choice as you could make. The Przewalski's horse is not a domestic horse gone feral, it's a separate species that was never tamed, with 2 extra chromosomes and a body shape unchanged since the Ice Age. Cave paintings drawn 40,000 years ago show the same stocky frame and upright mane, which is part of why researchers treat the animal less like livestock and more like a living fossil. And by the 1980s, it existed almost nowhere. The entire global population had descended from a dozen or so individuals captured in the early 1900s. After the Second World War, numbers had fallen so far that only a handful of animals were still capable of breeding at all, split between 2 European zoos. Every horse alive in 1986 carried that narrow, fragile bloodline. So the plan wasn't just releasing an endangered species into a hostile desert, it was releasing a species that had spent 3 generations with no exposure to a single wild winter into the same conditions that had wiped out its wild population in the first place. That first winter is where the real test happened. The herd arrived already weakened, carrying parasitic larvae that had burrowed into their stomachs before the cold even set in. Snow buried what little dry grass remained. The horses' manes froze solid. Researchers watching from a distance were told not to intervene unless the entire herd was in immediate danger, and they braced for the worst. One conservation journal had already begun drafting a piece explaining why the project had failed. Then, the behavior started. Stallions began breaking through ice on frozen streams with their hooves to reach water underneath, something none of them had ever done or seen done. Mares arranged themselves in rotating circles around the youngest horses during storms, shielding them from wind. The herd began reading which slopes the wind had cleared and which ones held deeper snow and grazing accordingly. Nobody taught them any of this. It had simply been sitting dormant, waiting for conditions that hadn't existed in their family line for 3 generations. Surviving the cold explained why the horses lived. It didn't explain why the desert started changing. That answer came from what the horses were doing to the ground itself without anyone directing them to do it. A Przewalski's horse weighs up to 800 pounds, and a running stride can drive that weight into the ground with force closer to a jackhammer than a hoofbeat. More than enough to crack open a crust that water couldn't penetrate. The horses didn't do this randomly. They avoided young shoots and pounded bare, compacted patches, breaking the ground open exactly where it needed breaking. They also moved constantly, covering roughly 15 kilometers a day in a pattern that created short grass here, tall grass there, bare ground in between. A patchwork that gave different insects, birds, and small animals different places to live. And their droppings, it turned out, were carrying seeds from more than 20 plant species, seeds that germinated better after passing through a horse's digestive tract than they would have on their own. A single gram of that dung could hold several viable seeds, roughly double what a cow's manure carries, and several times what sheep leave behind, and the horses were spreading it across 15 kilometers of ground every day. By the second spring, the numbers on the ground started backing this up. Grass in grazed areas grew back over 40% thicker than in untouched patches. Soil moisture retention rose by nearly a quarter within a year, not because of more rainfall, but because thousands of hoof prints per hectare were now catching water instead of letting it run off. Nitrogen levels climbed. Plant species that hadn't been recorded in the basin in 17 years began reappearing. Seeds that had apparently been sitting dormant in the soil the entire time, waiting for exactly this kind of disturbance. The recovery didn't stop at plants. Dung beetles returned to soil they disappeared from over a decade earlier. Insect populations climbed, which pulled in birds, which pulled in small mammals, which eventually pulled in predators. Foxes on camera traps, steppe eagles overhead, and at one point, a gray wolf recorded in the reserve for the first time in decades. Each new arrival was a species the desert hadn't been able to support, showing up because the horses had rebuilt the conditions underneath it. Surviving one winter and even changing the soil chemistry around a fenced enclosure still left one open question. Were these animals actually wild again, or just captive animals coping in a slightly bigger pen? That question got answered in August 2001, when the project removed the fences entirely and released 27 horses into open desert with no feeding, no shelter, no human support. For the first week, the herd barely moved, circling nervously near the release point. Then, on the 8th day, a stallion named Hong started walking north in a straight line. He didn't stop for 30 kilometers, and when researchers caught up, they found him standing beside a spring-fed pool that appeared on none of their maps. No horse in his family had walked that route in living memory. Whatever guided him, inherited instinct, scent, some pattern in the land horses can read and people can't, it worked. And it settled the question. These animals hadn't just survived captivity. They'd come back out the other side as wild horses. Foals born after the release grew thicker winter coats than their captive-born parents ever had, and they could pick out more than 20 plant species by smell alone, skills nobody had demonstrated to them. What followed was less a mystery and more a slow accumulation of proof. By 2023, the original 11 had grown to over 500, managing an area of desert bigger than many national parks. The water table under the reserve, which had been sinking for 3 decades, stopped falling around 2003 and began to climb back. Economists later tried to put a number on what that herd was actually worth to the land. Soil restoration, seed dispersal, water retention, carbon storage, and landed on roughly $47,000 per horse per year, adding up to tens of millions of dollars in ecological value annually. China's tree planting program, by comparison, had cost tens of billions of dollars over 25 years and had, in some of the driest regions, made the water table worse. The horses cost a fraction of that, and the desert around them was shrinking instead of growing. That result didn't stay in China. Mongolia's own Przewalski's horse population, started in the early 1990s, grew past 400 animals, showing the same pattern of grassland recovery. Kazakhstan began a similar release in the central steppe, and within a few years, that population passed 1,000. China itself is now expanding the reserve further, with an official target of roughly 2,500 horses by 2040. A population scientists believe could lock away tens of thousands of tons of carbon a year and support hundreds of species that exist almost nowhere else in the country. What all of these projects point to is the same conclusion. An ecosystem missing its foundational animal can't be rebuilt with rows of trees or irrigation pipes. It has to be rebuilt by putting the animal back and letting 3 generations of forgotten instinct do the rest. China spent billions fighting this desert with engineering and lost ground every year. It spent a fraction of that on 11 zoo-born horses, and the desert started shrinking. At what point did you realize the horses weren't being saved? They were saving the desert? Tell us in the comments. Thanks for watching.